So what is it all about? I think Paddy gave me a fairly good introduction. In terms of, it's all about media reputations, this survey. We're in such a fragmented industry, but the industry in itself is growing at an extraordinary rate. Billions of dollars out there being moved around and being argued over and fought for. And I think this ad says it all. Now, this was from the 1950s. I'm sure most of you have seen it before. Created by McGraw-Hill. It was intended to promote to B2B advertisers, to encourage them to brand themselves and make themselves known. Why would you use, as a client, any of these companies if you don't know who they are, who the company is, what their products are? This is just as true today for our industry. We're so fragmented. Why should a client be considering your brand? And this is just as true for the media agencies as it is for the media brands and tech brands. They are competing for exactly the same dollar that the media brands are themselves. So in this fragmented world, making your brand differentiated, it has never been so important. The survey itself measures 3 different constituencies. We've got the media constituency, agencies, and advertisers. Now, media was quite interesting because quite a lot of the tech brands said, you shouldn't be measuring us, we're not media. The way we defined media was any brand that was competing for an advertiser's dollar in terms of delivering an audience or managing an audience. And that's why the tech companies have been incorporated within this group. The report itself is broken into 3 sections. We have one which we call the State of the Industry, we have the media report and the agency report. I can't present everything to you in detail because I'm probably already running over time. I think I've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to really take you through a jog through each of those different sections. So we've got 3 different constituencies in terms of media, agency and clients. You can also look at results in terms of regionality. So everybody involved in this survey was involved in international media planning, buying, client side. And I think that's important. This is not a domestic orientated survey. They're international people. And you can look at the UK separately, continental Europe, Asia and North America. So, moving into the state of the industry. Now, for me, this is the most interesting part of the survey, and it's really actually quite positive. There's a really nice vibe coming out of this section. This is less about reputation, but more about where we're going and how we're behaving. So starting off, looking at people's perception of where we are with the media recession. 64% said they felt that the media recession was over. Now, for me, that was a really big positive. The UK and North America were the most positive, and Asia and continental Europe were lagging a little bit behind, but generally there is a significantly positive feeling there. The next question was about how business deals are done and how people communicate and the best methods of doing media deals. And I love this because it's about our industry still being about people. And 74% said that actually still doing business on a face-to-face basis was the best way of doing media deals. And in fact, advertisers were far more positive. They really still felt that doing business on a face-to-face basis was important to them. Yes, we looked at all sorts of different other things, obviously email and blah, 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 blah. But face-to-face still core to how we do business. It is a people industry. RTB, now the question was the core way, or the best way. It wasn't any way that you do this, but actually that was still, much slower and smaller than perhaps you would have expected. Yes, it's growing. Yes, if you go to any conference these days or open a trade publication, it will tell you everything is done by RTB. The reality is it's quite a lot smaller than you're perhaps led to believe. Budgets, who's spending what money and where? We actually have an enormous amount more detail than this. I've just aggregated things together for simplicity of charts. I know you can't see the numbers here, and that doesn't matter. The purple is advertisers and the grey is agencies. So it's not surprising down here under other that advertisers are spending more on that. Encompassed within that are things like events, PR, and those kinds of things. And obviously media agencies are less likely to get involved in allocation of those kinds of budgets. So that makes sense. I think what's interesting though is this split between TV and digital. Now, the advertisers that we measured on the survey were all big global advertisers with really hefty budgets. We're talking $50 million budgets here. They're not struggling to find pennies. And I think that's part of the reason why the TV for the advertisers is higher. The agencies obviously manage all of those big global budgets, but they're also managing lots of other smaller clients. And I think that's part of the reason why digital is much higher for agencies. I think also it's to do with the fact that there is an ethos within agencies to encourage their planners to spend more and more digitally. So I think there is maybe a little bit of overclaim going on in there. Now this is interesting. This is about what people, the perceptions of how things are going to change in future, how their budgets are going to shift over the next 18 months. And this really speaks for itself, this block here of digital spend. And you can see, again, the purple is about expecting growth. And you look at mobile, everybody's talking about, we want to spend, or we think we're going to be spending more in mobile. Now, if you look at the 2013 survey, you would have seen this exact same picture last year, literally exact. Very few percentage differences. Everybody was saying, I'm going to spend more in mobile, more in digital, more in paid search. However, if you compare what they actually spent last year to what they actually spent this year, I'm sorry if you're over on the other side, I'm not very good to see. These are the percentage actual changes year on year that you see down the right-hand side. And despite the fact last year, oh, sorry, I was told not to speak in front of you can see down the right-hand side is the changes, actual changes year on year. And what you're really seeing is that everybody is talking about, and they think they're going to be spending much more in digital. The actual shifts have been tiny. 1% up here, 2% down. They're really, really, subtle, the shifts. That doesn't mean that change isn't happening, but, don't get hysterical about it. The last bit I wanted to highlight from the State of the Industry section was about transparency and people's perceptions of transparency and whether it had improved or not. The purple is improvement, and overall, actually, it was more positive than I'd expected it to be. I had expected more cynicism and the shift to be much further that way. But again, there is a split between advertisers and agencies. Agencies clearly think that they're getting much better deals from their media suppliers and that there's a much clearer discussion going on there. But the advertisers are a little bit more cautious there. Now, Mark is going to be talking in a lot more detail about what transparency means in a moment, so I'm not going to waffle on too long about this. Second, thank you. The second section of the survey, the agency report. So, every agency, or pretty much every agency, does their own customer satisfaction survey, and they have a reasonably good feel about what their own clients think of them. What this survey does is tell them what other people's clients think about their agency, so therefore their prospective clients. It's about reputation, it's not about experience. That's quite important differentiation to make. So it's reputation as opposed to experience. So the baseline for any form of reputation is familiarity. How many people feel comfortable that they know enough about that company to do business with them? So here we have the agencies ranked in order in terms of the levels advertisers had in terms of familiarity with them, with Mindshare and OMD at the top. What you will then see is we ask them which agencies they would put on their pitch list tomorrow if there were no category conflicts to worry about. There's a very close correlation between, if you look at the top 5, they might be up one place, down another place. But the one agency that stands out as doing really well is Cara. They've gone from 7th place in familiarity to 1st place on the dream pitch list. So one would anticipate them to be doing fairly well over the next few months. We asked the clients about a whole raft of different criteria and what was important to them when they were selecting a new agency. And there were a whole load of other criteria as well, but these were kind of the key 6. And then we asked them to rate the agencies against these criteria. And here we can see the winners against each of the criteria. Strategic planning being what was perceived as the most important, and Mindshare coming top. Now it's interesting to note that Cara, who had come top of the dream pitch list, actually doesn't appear within coming top in any of the individual criteria. But I think congratulations should go to Mindshare, OMD, PhD, Zenith Optimedia, and Mediacom. Now, there are, in fact, winning certificates that these agencies will be getting, but we're not going to invite each of them up here to receive them now because we haven't got enough time, but they'll be given those after the event. The last bit of the agency report. Now, you look at this and you think this is a really positive thing. Look, there's 34% and it's going up. Actually, it's not necessarily a good thing. What this is we asked, instead of asking advertisers about the agencies, we asked agencies about agencies. We also asked media owners about what they thought about agencies. This is about what agencies people who are currently in an agency, what agency they would most like to work for next. Now, the top 2 were, in fact, Mediacom and Cara. But what was more significant was 34% of them said they didn't want to work for an agency at all in the future. Now, that had gone up by 10% from last year. So last year, 24% said they didn't. Now, if I was working for an agency, this is something I would be concerned about. It constitutes a brain drain from the industry. People are getting fed up, maybe not motivated enough, not trained enough. Anyway, it's something that really has to be looked at. We need to keep talent within our industry. And I'd love to see that number go down again next year. So now we're moving on to the media report, the media section of the survey. We measured 50 brands, I don't know whether you call them media brands, tech brands, and we loosely categorised them into 3 different groups. Crossover media were brands that had both digital and non-digital offerings. And then I think the other two descriptions are fairly clear for themselves. So similarly, in the same way as we were talking about familiarity, we first of all started asking them about exactly who they had done business with. Digital is by no means the new babies on the block anymore. Google out there, 78% of everybody had done business with Google. That's massive, absolutely massive. What was interesting was that if you look specifically among advertisers and who was doing business with advertisers, everybody dropped down. All the brands had done less business with advertisers and lower levels of reputations, with two exceptions, two notable exceptions, and that was Google and The Economist. Every other brand did drop down among the advertiser group. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if anyone's even going to be able to read this, but we asked them, in a similar way we've done for the agencies, we asked them to, across a selection of attributes, who was good at different things. I'm going to read these out because you probably aren't going to be able to read them. Professional sales and customer services, offering creative approach, new technologies, consumer insights, and transparent and accountable. We looked at each of the brands in two different ways. One is against all the respondents of the survey. And what you see within, if you look at all respondents, is that the big brands do well among everybody just because of the nature of them being big. Then we looked at it a different way and we cut it down by people who they had actually done business with. So people who, it's about... So what happens is that the small companies who maybe only are dealing with a very small proportion of the clients and agencies here, what you see is that they tend to do really well here. They have a much more, the clients that they do have a much more intense relationship with the people that they do business with. So you're seeing quite a big difference here. Oh, can anybody read this? I'm sorry. Will made me promise that I would include this chart because he wanted everybody who would come top to get their chance of having a name check. I'm not going to read everything out. I mean, there are some things that are quite obvious. You can see here, look, Google within their section, they nailed it right across the board on everything. Because of their size, they did brilliantly. There are some generalities that you can say. The crossover media brands did the best in professional services, and also they perform very strongly within consumer insight. The social networks were strongest within the kind of the creative areas and offering hot new technologies. Digital service providers, I think, were the most confused in terms of their branding and their offering and the strength. They generally came a lot lower. Spotify, yes, they were top within their group, but overall the group was lower down. But some of the smaller companies within that group had this kind of intense relationship, which I was talking about before. So companies like Odyssey Mobile, EE Buzzing, Exchange Labs coming up much higher within their own client group. Very last chart. This is what we call our Marmite brands. We asked everyone to nominate just one brand that they either really liked or really didn't like working with. And what you get is the ones that people really like, there are equal amounts of people who really don't like for most of them. There is potential here with Facebook, that they hope there's no one here from Facebook here today who's going to kill me. Facebook, I think you might want to have a bit of a look at your customer service offerings, because you're pissing a few people off out there. Anyway, here you go, our Marmite brands. So, this is the fastest whistle-stop tour of IMIS. It's a massive survey. There are 2 million different ways to cut the data. If you go to, there is a website, www.imis.eu, imissu. Anyway, www.imis.eu, and you can download a much more detailed key findings for the survey on there.